The clock ticks past midnight, and the world is asleep, except for the glow of screens where a storm is breaking. A grainy audio file, barely a minute long, floods X, shared and reshared until it's unstoppable. A voice, unmistakable yet fragile, cuts through the static. Taylor Swift, her words trembling like a confession held too long. "I didn't know who to trust," she says, her voice cracking, "but I couldn't stay silent anymore." The clip ends abruptly, leaving a void that swallows the internet whole. Fans freeze, their thumbs hovering over keyboards, hearts pounding as they try to make sense of it. What could break Taylor Swift, the woman who turned heartbreak into anthems, who faced down music moguls and won? X erupts with questions, hashtags, and theories, each post a spark in a growing wildfire. Whispers of Sean "Diddy" Combs, a name heavy with power and shadow, ripple through the chaos. What secret could bind these two titans? One a beacon of light, the other a figure cloaked in rumors. Before we unravel this story, a warning. This tale dives into sensitive waters. Allegations of manipulation, coercion, and the emotional toll of a cutthroat industry. The truths we'll explore may unsettle, may linger, but tonight we walk through the labyrinth of fame, betrayal, and courage, where one woman's voice dares to break the silence. 1 minute ago, Taylor Swift spilled Diddy's secrets, and the world will never be the same. Taylor Swift was more than a pop star. She was a movement, a cultural force woven into the fabric of millions of lives. From the moment she strummed her first chord in a Nashville coffee house, her story captivated the world. A teenage girl with a guitar and a gift for turning raw emotion into songs that felt like confessions. By 2025, she had become untouchable, a titan with 14 Grammy Awards, including 4 Album of the Year wins. Her shelves heavy with accolades that marked her as a generational talent. Her fans, the #1 Swifties, were a global army, their devotion fierce enough to crash ticket platforms and flood X with love in a heartbeat. Taylor was the architect of her narrative, a woman who clawed back her masters from a predatory industry, re-recording her albums to own her art outright. Headlines called her a trailblazer, a feminist icon, a mastermind who turned vulnerability into power. Her concerts sold out stadiums in minutes, her lyrics quoted like scripture, her every move dissected and adored. She was the golden thread in pop culture's tapestry, untarnished, unstoppable, her voice a beacon for those who felt unheard. Yet across the industry's glittering landscape loomed another figure, Sean "Diddy" Combs, a mogul whose name carried weight and shadow in equal measure. Diddy was hip-hop royalty, a producer, entrepreneur, and party king whose bad boy empire shaped the 90s and beyond. His influence stretched from music to fashion to media, his parties legendary, his connections a web of power. But beneath the charisma, whispers followed him, stories of control, of deals struck in dimly lit rooms, of young artists bent to his will. Posts hinted at his darker side, cryptic threads about his sway over careers, his ability to make or break dreams. Where Taylor's light was radiant, Diddy's was flickering, his legacy a mix of triumph and unease. The contrast was stark, her authenticity against his enigma, her openness against his guarded empire. Yet their worlds, so seemingly distant, were destined to collide, the echoes of their encounter threatening to unravel the myths they'd built. What could tie these two giants together? And what truth waited in the shadows of their shared history? The air in Nashville was thick with dreams, and for a 14-year-old Taylor Swift, it was the only air she wanted to breathe. In the early 2000s, she was just a girl with a spiral notebook, her blonde curls bouncing as she stepped onto open mic stages in dimly lit cafes. Her voice, soft but piercing, carried stories of first loves and small-town heartaches, each note a promise to the world. She was a prodigy, her ambition burning brighter than the neon signs on Music Row. At 15, she signed with Big Machine Records, a fledgling label that saw in her a spark that could light up the world. Her parents packed up their Pennsylvania life, moving to Tennessee to nurture her dream, their trust in the industry as boundless as her own. Taylor was young, wide-eyed, and fiercely dedicated, spending nights scribbling lyrics in her bedroom, her guitar a shield against the chaos of adolescence. She believed in the music industry's promise, work hard, stay true, and the world would listen. Her debut album in 2006, with its raw honesty and twangy charm, made her a country darling. her name whispered in boardrooms and sung by fans. But the industry she entered was a labyrinth, its corridors lined with gatekeepers whose smiles hid sharper edges. In that same world, Sean Diddy Combs was a colossus. By the time Taylor was strumming her first chords, Diddy had already reshaped music. His Bad Boy records, launched in the 90s, birthed legends like Notorious B.I.G. and redefined hip-hop's pulse. In the 2000s, he was everywhere, producing hits, launching fashion lines, hosting parties that glittered with A-listers. His influence was a currency, traded in recording studios and VIP rooms, his network a tapestry of power brokers and aspiring stars. But beneath the dazzle, there were murmurs, stories of young artists drawn into his orbit, their dreams tethered to his whims. Posts from years later would unearth these whispers, tales of contracts that bound too tightly, of late-night meetings where ambition met pressure. Diddy was a kingmaker, but his crown cast a long, unsettling shadow. For Taylor, the industry's shine began to tarnish early. Her rapid rise brought scrutiny that stung like a whip. Tabloids dissected her teenage romances, branding her a serial dater before she could vote. Contract disputes with Big Machine hinted at deeper tensions. Even at 17, she sensed the strings attached to her success. She'd sit in meetings, her heart racing, as executives older than her father spoke of her image, her sound, her future, as if they owned them. Whispers reached her, stories of artists who crossed the wrong mogul and vanished from the charts. In Nashville, New York, and LA, power pulsed through invisible networks, and Diddy's name surfaced often, a figure who could open doors or lock them shut. Taylor, still learning the industry's rules, brushed against its darker corners. A chance meeting at an awards show, a shared stage, or a hushed conversation at a gala, her path and Diddy's crossed in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. She was a rising star, but the industry was a chessboard, and not every move was hers to make. The red flags were subtle at first, a manager's cryptic warning, a deal that felt too good, a powerful figure's lingering gaze. Diddy's world, with its glamour and danger, was a place where ambition could soar or shatter, and Taylor, young and trusting, was walking its edge without knowing it. Her heart, so open to the world, was about to learn the cost of trusting the wrong hands. The night was electric, the kind that hums with possibility and peril. It was 2009, and New York City's skyline glittered like a promise as Taylor Swift, barely 20, stepped into a star-studded gala, her sequined dress catching the light like a beacon. The event was a music industry pinnacle, a place where deals were whispered over champagne flutes and futures were shaped in shadowed corners. Taylor, fresh off her breakout album, Fearless, was the golden girl of the moment, her smile bright but her nerves raw. She was still learning the unspoken rules of this world, where every handshake carried weight. Across the room, Sean Diddy Combs held court, his laughter loud, his presence commanding. He was a titan, his influence a currency that could buy loyalty or silence. Their paths crossed that night, a fleeting moment that would linger like a bruise. A mutual acquaintance introduced them, and Diddy's charm was immediate, his words warm, promising collaboration, mentorship, a chance to bridge her country roots with his urban empire. Taylor, young and eager to prove herself, felt the weight of his gaze, the allure of his power. It was a moment that felt like a door opening, but it led somewhere darker. The betrayal began subtly, cloaked in opportunity. Whispers on X years later would piece together a story, though incomplete and unverified, of a deal gone wrong. Allegations surfaced in cryptic posts, suggesting Diddy had dangled a collaboration, a chance to work with one of his artists or feature on a track that could catapult Taylor into new markets. But the offer came with strings, invisible but taut. Sources, anonymous and scattered across X, claimed Diddy leveraged his influence, pushing for control over her image, her sound, or even her public narrative. One post, buried in a thread from 2023, hinted at a late-night meeting where Diddy's team pressed Taylor to align with his vision, to soften her edges for a broader appeal. The implication was clear. Compliance meant access, resistance meant risk. Taylor, still navigating her place in the industry, felt the pressure like a tightening grip. She'd heard stories of other artists, young, ambitious, drawn into Diddy's orbit only to emerge diminished, their careers stalled by unseen hands. The red flags she'd ignored in her early years now burned bright, each one a warning she couldn't unsee. The emotional toll was immediate, a fracture in her carefully built world. Taylor had entered that gala trusting, her heart open to the industry's promise of camaraderie and growth. But as the night wore on, and in the weeks that followed, she sensed the shift. Diddy's warmth cooled when she hesitated, his calls less frequent, his tone sharper. A promised project vanished, replaced by rumors that painted her as difficult, uncooperative. She'd lie awake in her hotel room, the city's hum mocking her sleeplessness, replaying every word, every glance. Had she misread him? Was this how the game was played? The realization hit like a slow poison. Diddy hadn't seen her as an equal, but as a piece on his chessboard, a young star whose light he could dim or amplify at will. Her trust, so freely given, crumbled into something jagged. She felt ensnared, her ambition weaponized against her. Her youth a vulnerability exploited by a man who thrived on control. The betrayal cut deeper because Taylor had seen him as an ally, perhaps even a mentor. She'd admired his empire, his ability to shape culture with a single decision. But now she saw the cost of his power. Alone in her apartment, she'd pace the hardwood floors, her bare feet cold against the grain, her mind racing. The industry she'd loved felt like a maze with no exit. Every turn guarded by figures like Diddy, whose influence was a shadow she couldn't escape. She began to question everyone, her team, her friends, even herself. The girl who'd once poured her heart into songs now guarded it, her pen hesitating over the page. The stakes were no longer just about music. They were about her identity, her autonomy, her survival in a world that demanded compliance. Posts from fans later speculated about this period, her quieter demeanor, her guarded interviews, hinting at a wound she carried in silence. Taylor Swift, the girl who turned pain into poetry, was learning a new kind of pain, one that came from trusting the wrong hands in a game she hadn't yet mastered. The betrayal was a spark, and it would ignite a fire she'd carry for years, waiting for the moment to let it burn. The betrayal left Taylor Swift adrift in a sea of her own making, her once unshakable confidence now a fragile thing. In the months following that fateful gala in 2009, the weight of Diddy's manipulation settled into her bones like a quiet ache. She'd lie awake in her Nashville apartment, the hum of the city beyond her windows a cruel reminder of the world she'd fought to conquer. The ceiling fans spun lazily above, casting shadows that danced like specters of her doubts. Sleep was a stranger, replaced by endless loops of questions. Who knew? Who could she trust? Had her ambition blinded her to the industry's darker currents? Taylor, who'd built a career on bearing her soul, now carried a secret too heavy to sing about, a truth about power, control, and a mogul whose shadow lingered in her mind. She'd later speak vaguely in interviews about her struggles with anxiety during this period, her words carefully chosen, but heavy with unspoken pain. Posts from fans years later would point to 2010 as a turning point. Her smiles tighter, her eyes carrying a flicker of something haunted. The girl who'd once trusted the world to catch her was learning it could just as easily let her fall. The psychological toll was a slow bleed. Taylor's mind became a battleground, paranoia creeping into her thoughts like ivy. Every phone call from her team, every meeting with executives felt laced with hidden motives. She'd sit in recording studios, her guitar untouched, staring at lyrics that felt too raw, too revealing. The industry she'd loved now seemed a maze of mirrors, each reflection distorted by power plays and whispered deals. She questioned her own judgment, replaying that night with Diddy, his charm now a mask she couldn't unsee. Her journal, once filled with love songs, became a ledger of fears, pages of crossed-out lines, half-formed confessions she wasn't ready to voice. The weight of carrying this secret isolated her, even in rooms full of people. She'd smile for cameras, but behind the scenes, she was unraveling, her heart a clenched fist. Fans noticed her quieter presence, her retreat from the industry's social whirl. She was still Taylor Swift, the star, but privately, she was a young woman grappling with the cost of her dreams. Her career, too, bore the scars of this betrayal. The encounter with Diddy, though never publicly confirmed, seemed to shift her trajectory. By 2011, whispers of her disputes with Big Machine Records grew louder, her fight to control her music taking on a new urgency. Posts from industry insiders later speculated that her push to own her masters, a battle that would define her legacy, was born in moments like these, when she realized how easily her work could be weaponized by those with more power. She began to pull back from certain industry circles, avoiding the glitzy events where moguls like Diddy held sway. Her music shifted too. Speak Now, released in 2010, carried a defiance that felt personal, its lyrics laced with a quiet resolve to reclaim her voice. She poured her pain into her art, but the cost was steep. Lucrative deals with major labels or collaborators tied to Diddy's network seemed to vanish, replaced by a chilling silence. Her team, once a trusted circle, now felt porous, every decision scrutinized for hidden agendas. The industry's glamour had soured, and Taylor, still in her early 20s, was learning to navigate it alone. In her Nashville home, the isolation was palpable. The walls, lined with gold records, felt like a cage rather than a triumph. She'd sit on her living room floor, the hardwood cold beneath her, a glass of untouched wine on the coffee table. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional strum of her guitar, notes that never quite formed a song. She'd light candles, their flicker a small rebellion against the darkness, but even their glow couldn't chase away the questions. Who else knew Diddy's game? Were her friends, her mentors, complicit? The trust she'd once given so freely now felt like a wound, raw and unhealing. She'd scroll through X late at night, anonymous posts about industry power plays mirroring her own fears, each one a confirmation of the web she'd been caught in. Her mother, her anchor, would find her curled up on the couch at dawn, eyes red, her voice a whisper. "I just want to make music, Mom." But music, her sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield. The betrayal had fractured her world, and Taylor Swift, the girl who'd once believed in fairy tales, was learning to wield her pen not just as a storyteller, but as a survivor, fighting to reclaim the pieces of herself she'd lost in Diddy's shadow. The world stopped scrolling on a quiet Thursday night in June 2025, when a 30-second voice note pierced the internet's hum. It was Taylor Swift's voice, unmistakable even through the static, her tone raw and unsteady, as if the words had been torn from her chest. "I was young and he knew it," she said, her voice catching. "He used his power to make me feel small, to make me question everything." The clip, uploaded anonymously to X with the caption, "1 minute ago, Taylor Swift spills Diddy's secrets," spread like wildfire, retweeted thousands of times before anyone could blink. No names were mentioned, but the internet didn't need them. Swifties, with their razor-sharp instincts, pointed to Sean Diddy Combs, the mogul whose name had long been trailed by whispers. Fans dissected every syllable, every pause, their screens glowing late into the night as they pieced together a puzzle they hadn't known existed. The clip ended abruptly, mid-sentence, leaving a void that begged for answers. Was this a confession? A cry for justice? The world leaned closer, holding its breath, as the truth seemed to shimmer just out of reach. Was this Taylor's design, or a betrayal of her own? The question hung heavy as speculation swirled. Some on X argued it was a calculated move, a deliberate strike from a woman who'd mastered the art of controlling her narrative. Taylor, now 35, had spent years reclaiming her voice, re-recording her albums, calling out industry wrongs. Perhaps after a decade of carrying Diddy's shadow, she'd chosen this moment to break free, to let her truth ripple through a carefully chosen leak. Others whispered of an accident, a private conversation recorded without her knowledge, slipped into the world by a disloyal confidant. X posts from industry insiders hinted at a podcast recording gone awry, a moment of vulnerability meant for a trusted few. Either way, the clip was a spark in a powder keg. Taylor, who'd once sung of heartbreak with fearless clarity, now seemed to be unveiling a wound far deeper, one carved by power and betrayal. Her silence in the hours that followed only fueled the fire, her absence a canvas for the world's projections. The tension was palpable, a global pulse racing in sync with the clip's spread. By morning, Watcher Taylor Exposes Diddy was trending worldwide, with millions of posts dissecting the voice note's every nuance. Fans on X shared screenshots of old interviews, piecing together moments where Taylor's guarded glances or cryptic lyrics might have hinted at this secret. "Listen to I Knew You Were Trouble Again," one user posted, the thread exploding with thousands of replies. Others unearthed photos from that 2009 gala, Taylor and Diddy in the same frame, her smile tight, his hand on her shoulder. The internet became a courtroom, with fans as jurors, combing through years of clues. Media outlets scrambled, their headlines breathless. Taylor Swift's shocking allegations rocked the industry. Yet the lack of specifics, Diddy's name unspoken, the details vague, only heightened the suspense. Was she accusing him of coercion, manipulation, or something darker? The world waited, eyes glued to screens, for her next move. X became a battleground of theories. Some praised her courage, others questioned her motives, while a few dismissed it as a publicity stunt. But the clip's rawness, the tremor in her voice, felt too real to ignore. In her Nashville home, Taylor sat in silence, the weight of the leak pressing against her chest. The candles she once lit for comfort now flickered like warning signals, their glow casting her shadow on the walls. She scrolled through X, her phone a window into the storm she'd unleashed, or been thrust into. Each post, each theory, was a reminder of the secret she'd carried, the one she'd buried in songs and silences. If this was her choice, it was a gamble, a leap into a truth she'd avoided for years. If it wasn't, it was a violation, her vulnerability weaponized once again. Either way, the world was watching, and the industry's carefully guarded walls were beginning to crack. The clip was more than a moment, it was a turning point, a fissure in the facade of fame. Taylor Swift, the girl who'd turned pain into poetry, was no longer just singing her story. She was speaking it, and the world was finally listening, waiting for the truth to break free from the shadows. The screen flickered to life on a humid June evening in 2025. Taylor Swift's face filling millions of phones as she went live on Instagram. Unannounced, her eyes steady but glistening with something unspoken. The world had been buzzing since the voice note leak, and now here she was, alone in her Nashville studio, a single lamp casting soft shadows across her face. "I've spent years writing songs to tell my truth," she began, her voice low, almost a whisper. "But some stories are too heavy for a melody." The chat exploded, hearts and emojis flooding the screen, but Taylor's gaze didn't waver. "I was 20 when I learned how power can twist trust," she said, her words deliberate, each one landing like a stone in still water. "I met someone who promised to lift me up, but instead, they made me feel small, like my voice didn't matter." She paused, her breath catching, and the world leaned in. "I'm done carrying that silence." She didn't name Sean Diddy Combs, but the implication was unmistakable, a blade sharpened by years of restraint. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with the raw courage of a woman reclaiming her story. Diddy's response was a void, a silence that spoke louder than words. Hours after Taylor's live, his team issued a vague statement on X. "Mr. Combs denies any allegations of wrongdoing and remains focused on his work." The words were sterile, evasive, fueling speculation rather than quelling it. X posts erupted, some calling his silence an admission, others noting his history of dodging scrutiny. Industry insiders split like a fault line. A prominent producer, anonymous on X, praised Taylor's bravery. "She's saying what many can't." Others, tied to Diddy's empire, distanced themselves with calculated precision, their statements neutral, their unfollows swift. A singer who'd once collaborated with Diddy posted a cryptic emoji, a broken chain, sparking theories of solidarity. But the silence from other moguls, the ones who'd partied in Diddy's orbit, hung heavy, a reminder of the industry's unspoken code: protect the powerful at all costs. Taylor's testimony was a cathartic unraveling, a moment where vulnerability became strength. She leaned closer to the camera, her hands clasped tightly as if holding herself together. "I was young, and I trusted the wrong people," she said, her voice cracking but resolute. "But I'm not that girl anymore. I'm speaking for her, for every artist who's felt trapped by someone else's power." The chat surged with support. Ian was Stand With Taylor, trending within minutes. But it was her final words that lingered. "My truth is my freedom, and no one can take that away." The live ended abruptly, the screen fading to black, leaving millions to process the weight of her confession. She'd bared a wound, not for pity, but for power, her voice a beacon for those silenced by the industry's shadows. The moment was more than a confrontation, it was a reclamation. Taylor Swift, who'd built an empire on turning pain into art, had stepped beyond the stage, her words a defiance of the machine that had once tried to control her. Her hands shook as she set down her phone, the silence of her studio deafening, but her heart was steady. She'd carried this secret for over a decade, its weight a quiet companion through her rise. Now she'd set it free, and the act was a liberation, a shedding of the fear that had once kept her quiet. On X, fans wept through their posts, sharing stories of their own betrayals, their own silences broken by her courage. The industry, too, felt the tremor, whispers of other artists, emboldened by Taylor, beginning to speak. Her testimony wasn't just a moment, it was a movement, a crack in the facade of fame that promised to widen. Taylor Swift had spoken, and her voice, shaking but unbreakable, echoed far beyond the screen, a call to truth that no shadow could silence. The internet ignited within minutes of Taylor Swift's Instagram Live, the digital air thick with a storm that refused to settle. By dawn on June 6, 2025, nearly Taylor exposes Diddy was the top trend on X, amassing over 3 million posts in hours. Fans flooded the platform, their reactions a mosaic of shock, support, and raw emotion. Taylor's voice was shaking, but her strength? Unbreakable, one Swiftie posted, the words retweeted thousands of times. Others shared grainy screenshots from 2009, zooming in on uneasy glances between Taylor and Diddy at industry events, as if the past had been whispering its secrets all along. But not all were convinced. Skeptics on X questioned her timing, some accusing her of chasing clout. Why now? She's already on top, one user sneered, sparking heated threads that stretched into the thousands. The divide was stark. Adoration clashed with doubt, each post a spark in a growing fire. News outlets amplified the chaos, their headlines screaming, "Taylor Swift's bombshell allegations against Diddy rock music world." The voice note, now dissected across every platform, was no longer just a clip. It was a cultural earthquake. The industry felt the tremors immediately. Brands tied to Diddy's empire, his clothing line, his liquor brand, began to waver, with reports of paused campaigns and hushed boardroom talks. A major retailer quietly pulled his products from shelves, a move noticed by eagle-eyed fans on X. Artists who'd once orbited Diddy's world acted swiftly. Two prominent rappers unfollowed him on social media, their silence louder than any statement. A pop star, long rumored to have clashed with Diddy, posted a single word on X, truth, with a heart emoji, sending fans into a frenzy over its meaning. Yet others, powerful figures in the industry, stayed silent, their inaction a chilling reminder of the loyalty Diddy's influence still commanded. X posts from insiders hinted at panic behind the scenes, with one anonymous account claiming, "Execs are scrambling. No one wants to be tied to this." The ripples spread, exposing the fault lines of an industry built on secrets and power. The public divide deepened as the day wore on. On X, Taylor's supporters rallied with "We Stand with Taylor," sharing stories of their own encounters with betrayal, her courage a mirror for their pain. "She's speaking for all of us who've been silenced," one fan wrote, her post liked by tens of thousands. But the skeptics were relentless, some branding her a calculated storyteller, others suggesting she was deflecting from her own controversies. "Where's the proof?" one viral post demanded, fueling a thread of accusations that Taylor was playing the victim. The debate became a microcosm of the internet itself, fierce, fractured, and unforgiving. Yet amidst the noise, a quieter truth emerged. Taylor's words had cracked open a conversation long buried. Posts began surfacing from lesser-known artists, cryptic but pointed, hinting at their own stories of industry coercion. The firestorm wasn't just about Taylor or Diddy. It was about a reckoning, a demand for accountability in a world that thrived on silence. As the hashtags trended and the headlines blared, the music industry stood at a crossroads, its shadows exposed to the light, its future uncertain but undeniably changed. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered in Taylor Swift's quiet Nashville studio, where she sat with her guitar, the strings humming under her fingertips. The weight of her Instagram live confession, the voice note that had shaken the world, was lifting, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of peace. She'd spent years carrying the secret of Diddy's betrayal, its shadow dimming her light, but speaking out had been a reclamation, a stitching together of the girl she'd been and the woman she'd become. Her healing came through music, as it always had. New songs, raw and unfiltered, began to spill from her pen, lyrics that spoke of resilience and the courage to name the unnameable. She also turned her voice outward, quietly mentoring young artists, whispering advice in green rooms and over coffee. "Own your story, because no one else should." On X, fans noticed a shift. Her smiles brighter, her posts bolder, as if she'd shed a skin that no longer fit. The justice wasn't in headlines or courtrooms, but in the scrutiny now trained on Diddy, his empire under a microscope, his silence louder than any defense. Whispers of investigations, fueled by X posts and industry leaks, suggested his influence was fraying, a reckoning long overdue. Taylor's courage rippled beyond her own story, igniting a spark in the music industry's shadowed corners. Young artists, inspired by her defiance, began sharing their own truths. Cryptic X posts about coercive contracts, hushed meetings, and power misused. A singer-songwriter, barely 19, credited Taylor's bravery for her own decision to speak out against a predatory manager, her post going viral with number Truth Matters. The industry, once a fortress of silence, was cracking, its gatekeepers forced to face the light. Taylor's story had become a beacon, a call for accountability that echoed in boardrooms and studios alike. She wasn't alone anymore. Her voice had awakened others, a chorus rising from the ashes of secrets. The scars of her past remained, but they were no longer wounds. They were battle lines, proof of a fight she'd won by speaking. In the silence after the storm, Taylor Swift stood taller, her truth a melody that could never be silenced.